Take it back. There is no God, by Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller. This I believe thing seems to demand something more personal, some leap of faith that helps me see life's big picture, some rules to live by. So I'm saying this I believe there is no God. Having taken that step, it informs every moment of my life. I'm not greedy. I have love, blue skies, rainbows, Hallmark cards, and that has to be enough. But it's everything in the world, and everything in the world is plenty for me. It seems just rude to beg the invisible for more. Just the love of my family that raised me and the family I'm raising now is enough that I don't need heaven. I won the huge genetic lottery, and I get joy every day. Believing there's no God means I can't really be forgiven except by kindness and faulty memories. That's good. It makes me want to be more thoughtful. I have to try to treat people right the first time around. Believing there is no God stops me from being solipsistic. I read ideas from all different people, from all different cultures. Without God, we can agree on reality, and I can keep learning where I'm wrong. We all keep adjusting so we can really communicate. I don't travel in circles where people say, I have faith, I believe this in my heart, and nothing you can say or do can shake my faith. That's just a long-winded way to say shut up, or another 2 words that the FCC likes less. But all obscenity is less insulting than how I was brought up, and my imaginary friend means more to me than anything you can ever say or do. So believing there is no God lets me be proven wrong, and that's always fun. It means I'm learning something. Believing there is no God means the suffering I've seen in my family, and indeed all the suffering of the world, isn't caused by an omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent force that isn't bothered to help or is just testing us, but rather something we may be able to help others with in the future. No God means the possibility of less suffering in the future. Believing there is no God gives me more room for belief in family, people, love, truth, beauty, sex, Jell-O, and all the other things I can prove and make this life the best life I will ever have. This, I believe, began as a radio feature with Edward R. Murrow as the speaker, the introducer, in the 50s. It originally featured beliefs by famous individuals. It later expanded to include the beliefs of ordinary men and women. 50 years after the original series died, it was revived on National Public Radio. This is the 3rd time we've done a summer service using this theme. Many other UU congregations have done this. The guidelines for the essays are simple. Be brief, name your belief, be positive, and be personal. We are fortunate to have 4 members of our congregation willing to talk about one of their beliefs. And I'm happy to say that the first 2 are recent members. Jessica Ann, who is our first speaker, says this about herself. I am currently working as a full-time live-in nanny to 2 teenagers. I also do part-time work as a personal assistant, pet and house sitter, and wellness coach. I am a licensed esthetician, that's hard, and board-certified real estate assistant. Life has afforded me the opportunity of returning to school in the fall to pursue my degree in theater arts. After many years of being spiritual and seeking a religious community to become part of, I stumbled upon CVUUF. After my 2nd visit to Sunday service, I knew it was the place for me. I became a member and now am looking for ways to make this community more a part of my life. I am grateful for the opportunity to share one of the many beliefs I hold. I have 7 years clean of mind and mood-altering substances. I am passionate, loving, and grateful for life. And this is Jessica Ann.
This I believe. I believe in my body's ability to protect and heal itself. The first time I stumbled upon this belief, I was 25 years old and woke up one Saturday morning completely paralyzed. Apparently, ending up in the hospital completely paralyzed does not cause for alarm or special dietary needs. The emergency room doctor felt my paralysis was as a result of an anxiety attack, and I was introduced to what became an addiction for me, anti-anxiety medication. Long before finding my own relationship with God, God was working in my life. It was midnight before my doctor would be able to come up and see me. My regular doctor was away for the weekend, and the doctor filling in for his hospital rounds had encountered the disease I had and diagnosed me immediately. I had a very rare neuromuscular autoimmune disorder known as Guillain-Barré syndrome. What I come to know about my disease is that one of the ways it materializes is after a strong viral onset such as the flu, which I had untreated for 2 weeks. Once you treat the viral onset, the body continues to attack the virus you no longer have and ends up attacking the good cells. In response, the body completely shuts down in order to protect itself. This is what happened to me. I had gone to the emergency room the Wednesday prior to being paralyzed to get IV fluids to treat my dehydration from the flu, and Saturday morning landed paralyzed and afraid in a hospital bed. The doctor's recommendation was to wait to see if my body would regain its own strength or if I would need a complete blood transfusion. Each day, small sections of my body regain their movement, first my head and neck, and then my fingers, which I used to walk my arms around, and then my arms and my feet, and after about 2 weeks, my legs. The pain associated with regaining your muscles is indescribable, and once again, I was fed medication that contributed to addiction for me. Anti-anxiety medication, muscle relaxers, and narcotic pain pills, along with 3 times a week physical therapy, allowed me the miracle of normal body function again after about only 2 months. But this led to an awful addiction. The reality was I was probably always an addict. I just had never found the thing that made it possible to hide out in an empty apartment watching the same movie repeatedly for 3 months' time. Once again, though, God, the universe, my greater power, something was working in my life long before my belief in such a power. I come from a long line of addiction and thankfully recovery as well. The 3 months I spent abusing pain and anti-anxiety medication alone, I also spent in 12-step meetings. Some spark of spirit in me took over and demanded I not be loaded anymore. This began a very physically painful journey to my belief. The beauty of finding a 12-step program is working the 12 steps, which fostered the spiritual growth I needed to be okay with the constant pain I experienced as a result of the long-term effects of my Guillain-Barré. I stopped taking all my medication to follow the part of the 12-step program that suggests complete abstinence from all mind and mood-altering substances. I learned the power of my spiritual and emotional well-being and how tied those are to my physical pain levels. I spent time with friends and family and in 12-step meetings and remained active in physical therapy, and while my body was always in a certain level of pain, it seemed to be manageable without the use of drugs. I pay attention to my body all the time, listening for the natural messages it sends that says when I'm overdoing it. One night, when I was 27, I ended up in the emergency room after a day of shopping and crap food eating with my mom. I had crushing chest pains and thought I was having a heart attack. As it turns out, I had an untreated condition, gastroesophageal reflux disease, also known as GERD, which is heartburn and acid reflux all rolled into one. This was found to be very common in 20-somethings because of diets high in fried foods, acidic foods, and caffeine. Untreated, it will present symptoms similar to a heart attack. I was sent home with medication and a list of foods to avoid in order to not experience pain or create holes in my esophagus. A couple years later, still experiencing symptoms, even with medication, I was sent in for an endoscopy to ensure there were no holes in my esophagus. At this point, a good friend introduced me to alkaline water and a no-gluten diet. Within months of drinking the water and eliminating gluten, I was symptom-free and off medication, plus I was sleeping better and had more energy. This furthered my belief in my body's natural ability to heal itself and created a complementary belief in the power of proper nutrition. Last winter, 2012, my nerve pain was worse than it had ever been. When asked by a doctor to describe it, this is what I told him. It feels like Freddy Krueger or Edward Scissorhands are trapped inside of my body trying to claw their way out. At that point, I weighed 240 pounds. I was eating whatever I felt like all the time, hurting, not able to move, sleeping all day, not able to keep a job, and refusing to take narcotic pain medication because there had to be a better way. The doctors kept saying I was unwilling. I wouldn't follow the solution they were offering, narcotic pain medication. I knew there was a different, better, another way. I knew my body could heal itself. Under the caring urging of a friend, I paid to see a holistic doctor who also believes in our body's natural abilities. At that point, I was diagnosed with full body neuropathy, a nerve disorder similar to fibromyalgia or lupus. The message my body was sending was that I was tired and needed rest and proper care. I chose then to care for my body with proper nutrition. In January, I started a 2-day fast in order to cleanse my body of toxins, after which I stopped eating sugars and refined sugars such as white flour and concentrated on healthier choices to feed my system so that it would not be in pain and I wouldn't be forced to take narcotic pain medication. It is only 6 months later, I have lost over 40 pounds and still losing. I have had little to no pain and I have been hiking or swimming at least 3 times a week. I don't have a proper working immune system, so when I do get sick, it's weeks of rest, sometimes a hospital visit. However, when I take proper care of my body, it doesn't get sick. I'm grateful for my body's ability to heal and protect itself, and to show my gratitude, I nourish it with rest, nutrition, and movement. As a result, I have had no symptoms of GERD, no nerve pain flares, no need to feed an addiction with medication that turns me into only shell of a being. I sleep well, I have energy, I hike and swim and work and live. I am health. This I believe.
Marcy Wingard is our second speaker. She says this about herself. I am a 68-year-old widow, born in Chicago, have lived in Newbury Park for 35 years. I was born into a Jewish home, but my parents did not practice Judaism. I married a Danish man who had stopped having anything to do with the evangelical Danish Lutheran Church, the state church of Denmark, after confirmation at 13, and who wanted nothing to do with organized religion. After his death, I started looking for a community, more for companionship than for religion, as I had never been involved in religion before in my life. I got involved in CVUUF sort of from the back door, having a number of friends who were members and joining several groups prior to even attending one service. I started attending services in the middle of last fall, went to a class about UU practices in December, and joined the fellowship in January 2013. Since I have been a member, I have gotten involved in a number of activities and intend to continue on that path. Marcy Wingard.
I'm short. Okay, before I tell you what I believe, I want to set the stage. In 1964, I was in college in Oxford, Ohio. I was a member of the Westminster Foundation, which is a Presbyterian group, not for the religion, but again for the companionship. And we were sitting in the living room, and there was a big discussion going on between the hawks and the doves, okay? And I stood up and I said, "You're both right." And they all turned on me. So this is what I believe. I believe in the person who bridges different points of view. I believe in people who build bridges between others who do not understand one another. It is a difficult place to be in between two warring camps, or even those who disagree about religious ideas or political ideas. The person who chooses to stand in between is a peacemaker in the true sense. That person is putting the unity of all people above his or her personal beliefs. The translation that the peacemaker brings to the table can be the difference between continuing hate and a little glimmer of understanding. Of course, this can be a thankless task if others cannot or will not try to do the same. However, my UU community continues unfailingly to seek reconciliation. The same holds true for political beliefs. Even though most, though I suspect not all, UU members are progressive or liberal, they do not rail against the beliefs of other people, at least not in the public forum. Perhaps in the privacy of their own lives, they're more direct. But in public and in official discussion, I have never heard anyone being totally dismissive of the political ideas on the right side of the spectrum, even though often these beliefs go against so much of what our UU fellowship is trying to accomplish. One of the things that brought me into the UU fold was this quality of understanding, of acceptance of other points of view. Instead of ragging on people who are Christians or Mormons or Muslims, it seems to me that UUs try to understand where they are coming from and find common ground rather than accentuating the differences between the beliefs espoused by fundamentalist groups. It's so easy to laugh or heap scorn on the points of view that others express, but it takes a real bridge builder to look very hard for things that we all have in common. Witness the UU's commitment to a number of interfaith movements, such as stay-at-home program, in which partnering with other religious organizations, which includes partnering with other religious organizations whose basic tenets we do not share. And I thought it was interesting that Reverend Lora touched on this today. I was never a member of any religious organization before choosing to become a member of CVUUF in January. And you can bet that I thought long and hard about this decision and really looked at all sides of the situation before actually deciding to join. Always before, when I looked into a church family, there was more divisiveness than togetherness. And that was simply not in line with the way I look at things. So many of the sermons that I've heard in the last 6 months deal with religious tolerance and the art of finding ways people are similar rather than focusing on differences. My main reason for becoming a member at CVUUF was not to join a church, but to join a community, one that shared my worldview and the idea of social justice. But the direction of the Unitarian Universalist denomination has taken on reconciliation and bringing people together has further endeared me to this church of choice. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christina Houlberg. She says, I have been a member of CVUUF for a little over 5 years. I am an art teacher, art program coordinator for the city of Ventura. I have lived in Newbury Park for over 37 years. I'm in both the Women's Evening Group and Gardenias here at CVUUF. I'm also on the worship committee and flower arranger for the fellowship. And she's entitled her sermonette, Why I Am a Unitarian Universalist.
I've been a member here over 5 years, but I grew up in the Colonial Congregational Church of West Los Angeles. I started with my mother, who was the nursery school teacher, and I ended with Daddy. He was the youth group leader for the high school. I loved the fellowship of the congregation, and I especially loved those once-a-month potluck dinners. Man, the food was wonderful. But I never, not even as a very young child, once I got out of Mrs. Talbert's kindergarten class, which was great, I wasn't into Sunday school. In 3rd grade, in our Sunday school classes, we were talking about heaven and hell as described in the Bible. I raised my hand, and Thelma Healy called on me, and I said, but Mrs. Healy, isn't heaven or hell what you make of your life on earth? Mind you, I was 8 years old. She was a bit shocked. I don't remember if she answered me. I don't remember what she said. But I do know that when class ended, she took my hand, she walked me down to my mother's classroom, and she said, Lorraine, get this. And she repeated what I had said. My mother smiled. She looked up at Thelma and said, "Well, Thelma, I guess if that's what Christina thinks, then that's what she thinks. And that's okay." My mother gave me the green light to be a free thinker. When I joined the church, I retold this story to Reverend Betty, who had asked why I wanted to join this fellowship. She laughed and said, "I guess you were a Unitarian back in 3rd grade and you just didn't know it." Growing up, I struggled with all the ideology and theology, and finally, when I was 16, I told my parents that I just didn't feel comfortable going to Sunday worship services anymore. My dad looked at me sort of horrified. I said, "Daddy, I'll still go to your youth group meetings on Sunday night." I didn't reconnect with a church again until I joined this one, and by then I was 59 years old. The ability to believe what you want and interpret various religious teachings in your own way really drew me in. No one was dictating what I was to think. When I took Reverend Betty's Building Your Own Theology class, it was a challenge. She said it is much harder to write your own theology than to embrace someone else's dogma, creed. I am still a work in progress. At one time, I thought life here on this earth was it. You just had one shot. Now I'm not so sure. I believe wholly that the energy that is a part of us moves on and still exists when our physical body ceases to exist. Where it moves on to, I'm still working out. The indigenous people of the Northwest believe that all parts of the heavens and earth have a spirit. This energy inside of everything is what guides it in its day-to-day life. When the body that encases that energy dies, that energy does not die. So for instance, a beautiful bald eagle has just died. Spirit of the eagle leaves. Perhaps over here, a cub is being born, and spirit of the eagle will now go into that baby bear and become spirit of the bear. In this way, that energy, spirit, moves on and on. It's a continuous flow, and I connect with this spiritual concept of our energy moving forward through time. I do believe that most of us are old souls, that we have been here before. Each time we are working towards a place of spirituality that allows us to be one with a higher place of energy. We come back each time to work out the kinks, if you will, to right wrongs, to nurture our souls, to become a better and more compassionate human. We have to recognize our inner strength and energy and use it while we are on earth to leave a positive imprint. I try to do this in small ways with those near and dear to me. If I can be a positive force in their lives, it makes my own soul that much richer, that much fuller. In fact, if I am wrong, and we only have this one shot, I still feel I must do all I can to leave a positive impact on this earth, to have had a life that is meaningful. Our purpose here in this time is to become the best person we can, to help Earth and each other. It is impressive the quality that this fellowship has achieved through camaraderie and kinship. Because I watch others give so much of themselves, it makes me want to work on myself to become a better person, one who can give more and worry about receiving less. I peruse the many wonderful readings in the back of our gray hymnal, and am so inspired by a large variety of people. Some of these readings are from the Bible, ministers, other Unitarians, St. Francis of Assisi, from the Hindu and Buddhist teachings. But all of these beautiful words convey one universal thought. We are here to help one another, to help and respect our earth, and to leave this world better than when we entered. These words and teachings inspire me to do more each day, to appreciate all I have, and to be truly thankful. When I came to this church the first time, it was on an Easter Sunday, and I was in awe. Here was a group of people giving each other flowers in a flower communion. Here was a minister talking about how we can help one another as you would in a large family. There was no mention of sin and no mention of anyone dying for me. It was revelatory. And during that service, I literally, physically felt this presence within myself of calm, this positive energy. And I knew I was home. I'm going to cry. Sorry. I had finally found what I had been looking for since I was 8 years old.
Our last speaker is Paul Chavez. He has been a member here for 8 years. He served on the Board of Trustees and played music and run sound for part of that time. He is a designer for an audio equipment maker in Northridge, California. Paul.
Well, it appears my belief might interfere with your belief that we should be done on time, so I'll try to be brief here. I believe no one is evil. I believe those who are considered evil are the result of an unstable universe. Even so, to this day, when I hear about a terribly unjust act, I sometimes impulsively feel anger and hate towards an evil person who has committed a destructive act. What possessed this person to do this terrible thing, I think to myself. But on some days, it just takes me a few minutes to remember that I believe the causes of these bad deeds are a form of natural disaster. When an earthquake occurs, I don't attribute the events to the supernatural anymore. I know enough about plate tectonic movement to understand that an earthquake is the result of understandable pressures that are released. Unpredictable, but understandable. When a large earthquake happens, I feel compassion to those who are affected, but I don't have magical thoughts about why it happened anymore. In college, for reasons I don't really understand, I became interested in psychology, and as an engineering and music major, I only had time for this as sort of a hobby, sometimes reading about Freud and Jung in my spare time. That might partially explain why I had to drop my engineering major eventually. Eventually, this interest did help me professionally, though. When writing about neuroscience began to trickle down for public consumption, it became one of my favorite topics because as a designer of technical systems, I really had to understand when humans are sort of have extraordinary abilities and when they're limited, and that all helps me to understand when a product feature might be confusing and how to change it to make it simpler. A few Sundays ago, at the music service, Merlin talked about Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks has done the most to demonstrate how challenging it is to fully understand human behavior. He taught me the most important lesson of all, that behavior that results from brain injury is often inconceivable. Sacks does this by telling these amazing stories about the improbable things that happen to people with brain injuries. He describes a man who suffered a condition called visual agnosia that prevented him from recognizing anything or anyone except through their individual parts. To him, a rose was a convoluted red form with a linear green attachment about 6 inches long. Then there was the doctor and non-musician who, after being struck by lightning, developed a deep love of piano music, learned how to play the piano, and became an accomplished concert pianist. Dr. Sacks' stories like this have already filled 12 books. There are numerous studies on how now that continue to show how bad behavior is explainable. Damages in the amygdala and orbital frontal cortex or the right insular cortex can lead to risk-taking that may have led to the economic crash of 2008. Individuals who have powerful positions in government or business have increased level of adrenaline and dopamine, which can cause chemical changes that can lead to cheating and other reckless and aggressive behavior, something we see the results of every day. Studies have even suggested, why you might be sitting here in the room, that liberals tend to have a larger and or more active anterior cingulate cortex useful in detecting and judging conflict and error, and conservatives are more likely to have an enlarged amygdala where the development and storage of emotional memories take place. And of course, hatred and bad behavior can also be taught and passed from generation to generation. I like Dennis Leary's words on this. Racism isn't born, folks, it's taught. I have a 2-year-old son. You know what he hates? Naps. End of list. Observing these discoveries has led me to believe that destructive human behavior is a different sort of natural disaster. If a lightning strike can lead to someone becoming a concert pianist, then it's not difficult to comprehend how a minor chemical imbalance could lead to mass murder. It's a different sort of storm. A huge storm may blow down a tree and crush a house. A microscopic one may sever a branch of neurons that helps a person know right from wrong. Believing this causes me to interact with people in a very different way than earlier in my life. A deeper understanding of the delicate balance that keeps people kind and the minute biological events that can change them has forced me to cultivate a deep compassion for those who are destructive and a profound appreciation for those who live well. Some people may be injured, not evil, and I believe they may deserve the most care and compassion of all.
I invite you to speak to any of our presenters during the coffee hour, and I think they've all offered us a lot to think about. At this point,
We are the Conejo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our mission is to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion. Like us on Facebook, check out our website at CVUUF.org, or come visit us. See you soon!